I gifted my wife's parents a car. Their reaction made me take it back and question everything. When I married Claire, I knew her parents weren't wealthy. They lived modestly, driving the same rusty sedan for over 20 years. I respected them for it. They never complained, never asked for help, just kept working hard and making do with what they had. Over the years, I became close to them. We'd share dinners, go on weekend picnics, and sometimes I'd help fix things around their house. Still, I could see how much they struggled. Their old car coughed and rattled like it was begging for retirement, and every time we visited, I worried whether it would even start when they needed it. Last month, after I got a big bonus at work, I decided I wanted to do something special. Not for recognition, not to show off, but to genuinely help them. I went to the dealership, picked out a beautiful, safe, reliable SUV, and had it delivered to their driveway with a big red bow on the hood. When they came outside, I was grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "Surprise," I said. "You don't have to worry about that old car anymore. This one's yours." I expected smiles, maybe even tears of joy, but instead I saw something I didn't understand. Their faces dropped. Claire's mom looked at her husband, then at me, and her eyes filled with not happiness, but something else. Sadness? Disappointment? Her dad didn't even walk closer to the car. He crossed his arms, his voice heavy. "You didn't have to do this." "I know I didn't have to," I said quickly. "I wanted to." But Claire's mom shook her head. "It feels like you're trying to fix us with money, like we're some charity project to you." Her words hit me like a punch. I froze, confused and hurt. "No, that's not what I meant at all." Her dad cut in, his tone sharper now. "We don't need you to buy our affection. If you think you can just throw money at us to make us like you more, you're wrong." I stood there in stunned silence, the shiny new car between us feeling like a giant mistake. I'd imagined this moment as a heartfelt gesture. Instead, it felt like I'd insulted them. That night, I couldn't sleep. The car was still sitting there, untouched. The next morning, I made a decision. If they saw my gift as an insult, I wouldn't force it on them. I called the dealership and arranged for it to be picked up. When the tow truck arrived, I didn't say a word to them. I just watched as the red bow was tossed aside and the car disappeared down the street. But inside, something had changed. I started wondering if this was really about the car, or if there was something deeper they'd been holding against me all along. The silence after the car was gone was louder than any argument. Claire's parents didn't call. They didn't text. And when we visited the following Sunday, the air in their small living room felt thick, as if we were all pretending the incident had never happened. Claire tried to make small talk, asking her mom about the garden and her dad about his fishing trips, but I could see the way they glanced at me, quick, cold flickers of the eyes before looking away. It stung more than I wanted to admit. That night, on the drive home, Claire broke the silence. "You shouldn't have taken the car back," she said softly, staring out the window. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. What was I supposed to do? They made it clear they didn't want it. "They didn't say they didn't want it," she replied, her tone carrying frustration now. "They just don't like feeling indebted. My parents have always been proud, and when someone gives them something big like that, they see it as a reminder they couldn't get it themselves. So I'm supposed to do nothing while they drive around in a death trap?" I snapped before I could stop myself. Her head turned sharply toward me. "It's not about the car, Mark. It's about how it made them feel." I wanted to argue more, but something in her voice told me I wouldn't win. Still, I couldn't shake the nagging thought in my mind. Why did they assume the worst about me? I never treated them like charity. 2 days later, while scrolling through my messages at work, I saw a text from an unknown number. "Next time you want to buy our approval, save your money." No name, but I didn't need one. The tone, the phrasing, it was her dad. My jaw tightened as I stared at the screen. Approval? That wasn't what I was after. But if they were going to see me as some arrogant outsider trying to buy my way into their family, maybe it was time to rethink how much of myself I gave them. That night, Claire noticed I was quieter than usual. "You're still upset," she said. "I'm just starting to wonder if your parents ever actually liked me," I muttered. She hesitated before answering. They had their reservations at first. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about the car. This had been building for years. Claire's words replayed in my mind like an echo I couldn't escape. They had their reservations at first. I couldn't stop thinking back to the early days of our relationship. The first dinner I'd ever had with her parents, her dad barely spoke to me, only asking about my job and making a few pointed comments about young men who think money solves everything. At the time, I brushed it off, assuming it was just a protective father being cautious. But now I wondered if he'd been warning me even then. That weekend, we were invited over again. I almost said no, but Claire insisted we shouldn't let the tension fester. When we arrived, her mom greeted her with a hug, barely nodding in my direction. Her dad didn't even look up from the newspaper. We sat down to lunch, and for the first 10 minutes, everything was painfully normal. Then, out of nowhere, her dad put the paper down and said, "So, Mark, bought anything else for anyone lately?" Claire's fork clinked against her plate. "Dad," she warned. I kept my voice calm. "No, I've been busy at work." He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. "Good. People should earn what they have, not have it handed to them." Her mom chimed in then, looking straight at me. "It's easy to be generous when it's just money. Harder to give something of yourself." The words were sharp, but what cut even deeper was the implication. They didn't just dislike the car, they didn't respect me. I tried to keep my composure for Claire's sake, but my appetite was gone. I barely touched my food. The rest of the lunch passed in awkward silence until we finally left. In the car, Claire whispered, "I'm sorry. I don't know why they're acting like this." But I did know, or at least I thought I did. They'd never truly accepted me. The car had just given them an excuse to say what they'd probably been thinking for years. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted to see me as nothing more than a man trying to buy their affection, I'd stop trying to prove otherwise. But deep down, a part of me wasn't ready to just walk away quietly. I wanted them to see the truth, even if it meant shaking up everything between us. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. I had bent over backward for years to be a good son-in-law. I'd helped fix their roof after a storm, covered unexpected medical bills when Claire's mom needed surgery, and driven hours just to help them move furniture. I'd done all of it without keeping score. Yet somehow, in their eyes, I was still the guy trying to buy their approval. The next week, Claire mentioned that her parents' old sedan had finally broken down for good. "Dad says he's going to take the bus to work until they can figure something out," she said, looking worried. I shrugged, pretending to be indifferent. "Well, they'll manage. They don't need my help, remember?" Her eyes searched mine. "Mark, are you really going to hold this grudge?" "It's not a grudge," I replied flatly. "It's boundaries." But the truth was, part of me wanted them to struggle. Not because I enjoyed seeing them in a tough spot, but because I wanted them to realize what it felt like when I wasn't there to step in. A few days later, I got a call from Claire's brother, Evan. We'd never been particularly close, but his tone was urgent. "Look, man, I don't know what happened between you and Mom and Dad, but they're having a hard time. The car's dead, and they can't get around. Maybe you could help." I almost laughed. I already tried. They made it pretty clear they don't want anything from me. Evan hesitated. "They didn't mean it like that. They're just proud. You know how they are." "Yeah," I said. "I do." And I hung up. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt Claire watching me in the dark. "You're punishing them," she said quietly. "Maybe," I admitted. "Or maybe I'm just letting them live by their own principles." But even as I said it, I knew this wasn't over. Because deep down, I wanted more than just to let them be. I wanted them to see me differently. I wanted them to admit they'd been wrong about me. And I had an idea how to make that happen. The idea came to me the following weekend. If I couldn't convince Claire's parents through generosity, maybe I could do it by showing them what I was really worth, without money ever being part of the equation. I knew they were fiercely independent, but they also had a long list of problems around their house that they'd been getting to someday for years. Broken fence, leaky sink, creaky floorboards. I decided I'd fix them myself, quietly, without announcement, without a cent exchanged. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Claire's mom mentioned to Claire in passing that the fence had finally collapsed after a storm. "Guess we'll live without it," she'd said. That Saturday morning, I showed up at their place unannounced, wearing old jeans and a t-shirt. Her dad was out back, looking over the wrecked fence with a frown. "What are you doing here?" he asked, clearly surprised. "Thought I'd lend a hand," I said simply. "Don't worry, no strings attached." He gave me a long, wary look but didn't stop me. For hours, I worked alongside him, sawing, hammering, and digging post holes. We barely spoke, but there was a subtle shift in the air, less hostility, more silent cooperation. By the time the sun dipped low, the new fence stood straight and sturdy. He tested one of the posts, gave it a nod, and muttered, "Not bad." It wasn't much, but coming from him, that was practically a speech. Over the next few weeks, I found excuses to help in similar ways, fixing their sink, repairing the shed door, even repainting the porch railing. Each time, I refused any kind of payment, and each time, I saw a little more of their walls come down. Still, they never brought up the car again. Until one Sunday, out of nowhere, her mom said, "You know about that SUV, we might have overreacted." Her dad shot her a look, but she continued, "It wasn't about the car itself. We just didn't want you thinking we were using you." I set my tools down slowly, meeting her eyes. "I never thought that. Not once." Her dad shifted uncomfortably, then finally said, "Maybe we judged you too quickly." It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was the closest I'd ever heard from him. And in that moment, I realized I'd gotten what I wanted all along. Not their gratitude, but their respect. Still, part of me wondered if I should have just left things as they were. Because what happened next made me question whether this fragile peace would last. Just as I was beginning to believe things might actually be turning around, Claire's dad surprised me one evening with an unexpected visit at our house. He didn't announce himself. He just showed up at the door, hands shoved deep in his pockets, face unreadable. Claire wasn't home, so I let him in, feeling a strange mix of apprehension and hope. Maybe this was the moment he'd finally open up completely. Instead, he sat down without a word and stared at the floor for what felt like minutes. Finally, he looked up. "I want to talk about that car," he said, voice low. "Not the gift, but what it means." I nodded, waiting. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "For years, your wife and I struggled to give her a good life. We didn't have much, but we had pride. When you showed up, everything changed too fast. We felt like we were losing her to someone who could buy things for her, but maybe couldn't understand where she came from." His words hit harder than any insult. It wasn't about the money. It was about the fear of losing his daughter to a life he didn't recognize. I leaned forward, trying to bridge the gap. "I never wanted to replace you or take anything away from her. I wanted to build something with you." He gave a half smile, tired but genuine. "That's what we're scared of. Change." We talked for hours that night. About family. About fears. About respect. About acceptance. For the first time, I felt like I was finally part of their world. Not as a stranger with a wallet, but as a man they could trust. By the time Claire came home, her dad was leaving, shaking my hand firmly. "Thank you, Mark, for not giving up. I knew it wouldn't be perfect from here on out. But for the first time in a long while, I dare to hope." But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. Because a week later, Claire's mom called me crying. Something had happened, something that threatened to undo everything. When Claire's mom called, I could hear the tremor in her voice before she even spoke. "Mark, it's Dad. He's been hospitalized." My heart dropped. I dropped everything and rushed to the hospital, finding Claire already there, pale and trembling. Her dad was in the ICU, hooked up to machines, his breathing shallow but stable. The doctor said he'd suffered a mild heart attack, likely brought on by stress and exhaustion. As I stood by Claire's side, I felt a strange mix of emotions: worry, guilt, and something else. The overwhelming need to be there for them all. For once, the past grievances and misunderstandings felt insignificant compared to what really mattered: family. Over the next few days, I visited the hospital daily. I helped Claire with errands, sat with her parents when she couldn't, and slowly began to feel that fragile trust we'd built growing stronger in the face of crisis. One evening, as her dad regained some strength, he reached out and grabbed my hand. "Mark," he whispered, "I'm sorry. For everything. I was wrong to push you away." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Your family," I said. "We're in this together." But the peace was short-lived. Just as her dad was preparing to come home, Claire's mom confided in me something that shook me to my core. "She's worried," she said quietly. "About you. About us." "What do you mean?" I asked. She's afraid that no matter what happens, you'll always feel like an outsider, like you have to prove yourself again and again. It hit me harder than a heart attack ever could, the idea that despite everything, I might never truly belong. And then the real test came, a decision that would force me to choose between pride and love, between standing my ground or breaking down the walls once and for all. The next morning, Claire and I sat at the kitchen table, the weight of her mother's words pressing between us like a storm about to break. "Mark," Claire began gently, "maybe it's time to let go of proving anything to them. Maybe it's time to stop trying to change how they see you and just focus on what really matters." I looked down at my coffee, the bitter taste matching the knot in my chest. "I don't know if I can," I admitted. "I've spent so long fighting to earn their respect. It feels like who I am depends on it." She reached across the table, her hand covering mine. "You are more than what they think of you, and they're more than their fears and doubts." Her words settled over me, but inside I knew that the road ahead would still be rocky. Pride, after all, isn't easily set aside, especially when years of tension have built walls that feel impossible to tear down. That afternoon, I decided to invite Claire's parents over for dinner. No gifts, no grand gestures, just us talking, eating, maybe even laughing. When they arrived, I could tell they were tentative, unsure of what to expect. The meal was simple but homemade, a blend of Claire's favorite recipes and a few dishes I'd learned over the years. The conversation started stiffly, whether work, the mundane things that fill silence, but gradually walls began to lower. Claire's dad shared stories from his youth, cracking rare smiles, while her mom offered tips on gardening that I clumsily tried to follow. It felt like a fragile peace, a quiet truce that held the promise of something better. But just as I was beginning to believe we could move forward, Claire's phone buzzed with a message. Her eyes flicked to the screen, and then, with a sudden change in mood, she excused herself to take the call in the other room. I sat alone at the table, heart pounding, waiting for what I feared might be the beginning of the end. I sat alone at the table, the quiet ticking of the clock amplifying every second Claire was away on that call. My heart hammered in my chest, every instinct screaming that something was wrong. When she returned, her face was pale, her eyes glossy. She sat down silently, avoiding my gaze. "What happened?" I asked gently. She hesitated, then sighed. "It's my brother, Evan. He told me some things about you." My stomach tightened. "What kind of things?" She swallowed hard. "He said your help was more about showing off than genuine kindness. That you only did things to impress my parents and make them feel obligated to you." The word stung like a slap. I wanted to yell, to defend myself, but the exhaustion in her voice made me pause. "Is that true?" she asked softly. "No," I said firmly. "I've never wanted anything from them, or you, except to be part of the family." She looked down, conflicted. "Maybe that's how it looks to them." Suddenly, everything came crashing down. The years of effort, the awkward silences, the stolen moments of connection, they all seemed to unravel in a single moment. I realized then that no matter what I did, some wounds ran too deep. Some scars couldn't be erased by gestures or good intentions. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. "I want to fix this," I told Claire, voice steady. "But I need your help. I can't do it alone." She nodded slowly. "Then let's try. Together." And in that fragile promise, amidst the pain and the doubts, I found a glimmer of hope. But as the night grew late, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. The following weeks were a delicate dance. Claire and I became a team, carefully navigating the fragile ties between me and her parents. I stopped trying to fix things with grand gestures and instead focused on small, consistent acts of presence, checking in with them, sharing meals, listening more than speaking. Slowly, the walls that once seemed impenetrable began to crack. Her dad invited me to help with his garden, and her mom asked for advice on fixing a loose cabinet door. No longer were these moments about proving myself. They became genuine connections. One afternoon, as I helped Claire's dad plant new flowers, he paused and looked at me with something close to respect. "You're not who I thought you were," he admitted quietly. I smiled, feeling years of tension lift in that simple acknowledgement. Yet beneath the surface, the echoes of past misunderstandings lingered. Evan's words had planted seeds of doubt, and rebuilding trust was a slow, ongoing process. But I was ready for that journey because I realized something important. Family isn't built on money or gifts, but on time, patience, and honesty. One evening, as Claire and I sat on our porch, she rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "We made it through the worst." I kissed her forehead and replied, "Yeah, but the best is still ahead." Because despite the pain, the anger, and the heartache, love had found a way to survive, and that was worth everything.